Hi there, I'm Liz Leach-Murphy from Imagineer, and this is our new series for 2022 called Monday's Meanderings. And this is going to just be an opportunity to share some of our observations and thoughts and learning through the work that we do. And the first one really we want to talk through is around some of the things that we see happening within the health and social care system that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. We have a health and social care system that in the past has been quite clunky sometimes and difficult to enact and can be difficult in how people connect in with that health and social care system, to one that has become quite complicated and quite clunky. And over the recent years, especially during the pandemic and the implementation of the Coronavirus Act, one that is largely broken in many ways, and we're seeing this across the country, in the fact that people who are in a position in life where they're needing to access care and support often find the very process of accessing care and support incredibly stressful and at times actually traumatizing. So what's actually going on? What is this about? And I read an article years ago by John O'Brien, and oh boy, have I tried to find this article again and I can't find it anywhere online. But he wrote this really insightful 4-page article about the myth of regulation and the crazy world that regulation actually makes happen. So in a nutshell, what he was saying in this article was, we have things go wrong, there's human error, there's system error, things sometimes simply don't go as we hope or we expect. And the response to that within health and social care system is to bring another dynamic of the system into place to check that that doesn't happen again, or we have another steer of regulation so that we have a team of people who are regulating services across the UK and checking in that things are being done well and being done good. And obviously everybody wants to see that happen. Everybody wants to make sure that the services that people receive or the lives that they're living are ones that make sense and ones that are quality lives, from the person's perspective. But we only have a finite amount of budget available for making that happen. And every time a new layer of regulation comes into play, there's a portion of the budget goes towards funding the regulation, and hand in hand that then means it comes and is taken away from that direct support for individuals. So we end up in this very kind of unlogical position where the very resource that's there for people ends up going into funding the regulation of that provision. And ultimately, the more that resource is taken away from that very front delivery, the less there is to actually provide a quality experience. And we end up in this complex loop and never actually getting to a place where it's better at the front end experience. And that's been with me as a kind of an insight for a long time. Like, how do you break that? How do you get away from that place? And I've recently, thankfully, through the work that I'm doing with a chap called Bob Rhodes, I've been introduced to a book called Beyond Command and Control, written by John Seddon. And it's 160 pages of complete sense. And John shares a really similar insight that he frames as failure demand. So what we have is a health and social care system that responds to the failure and builds up more systems to respond to that failure and to make sure that failure doesn't happen again. Very similar message to what John O'Brien shared many years ago as well. So I think one of the things that is going to be really interesting to explore when people have the opportunity to do so, and when there's a gap in the conversations, is how can we get to a better place with this? How can we get to a more sensible place with this? And what really makes sense from the perspectives that I'm reading from other people and from our own perspective as well, is to actually really get better at having that connection with people, and being able to actually move from a delivery that's process driven to one that's relationally driven. So when people approach the very systems that are there to support our citizens in society, that we move away from one where people have got to prove their eligibility or go through an assessment process to determine their eligibility, to then one that's about support planning. It's a very process-driven experience, and to move to one that's more relational. And Bob and many people that have been involved in social work from before these current times will say that that's exactly what social work was originally about. It was about building a relationship with people in communities and finding logical solutions together. And so it would be fantastic to get to a place where that first connection is one that's about a conversation and not a form that needs to be filled in. It'd be great to get to a place where people who are representing the social care system in whichever role that they hold are able to work in a way that is based on trust and building relationship and building solutions that make sense to the individual, and being able to respond to that quickly, rather than what we currently have, which is an assessment process where people can be waiting months, and people can then be waiting even longer for the support plan. And they're two processes that need to be followed before the person even accesses the support that they require. And when they get to the stage of accessing the support they require, that often is from a predetermined list of services that have been commissioned. And throughout that journey, people's situations can be deteriorating, could be becoming worse, and it could lead to a point where the person actually requires more support than they did on that initial contact, if only that initial contact had been responded to. So how do we pivot back to that? I think that's our place of exploration at the moment. How do we strip back the systems? How do we strip back the processes so we can get to a stage where we're functioning on a relational level, where we're having conversations that are steeped in very good listening, are steeped in empathy, are steeped in trust, and in kindness as well, and to support people from a place of where they are in their life and helping them to get to a place where they want to be and that what makes sense for them. And I think safely bet and guarantee that if we was to achieve that, we would be in a much better place, not only from a place of quality of life, but also from a place of resource distribution and making the most of the money and the resources that are available to achieve this as well. So I think that's quite enough for a Monday morning. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to kind of be involved in conversations around this and be part of maybe leading that change. Thanks for listening.